Hello and welcome to An Idol Called Food. I'm your host, JT Tapias, and today I want to tell you a story that I find fascinating. I mean, it was frustrating when it first happened, but then I had to sit back and go, you know what? This is an interesting story. And so it goes like this. She lost 35 pounds in 90 days. She gave us glowing reviews. She actually called our program the best thing known to mankind. Then she suddenly took it all back. That's right. She took it all back. Why? She claimed our plan had created food distortions in her. In other words, she couldn't stop thinking about the boundaries and the things that she couldn't do and she could do. But here's what I really think happened and how diets can shape the way we see food for better or for worse. In this particular case, she didn't interpret what was happening very well, and it caused a lot of issues. I want to talk to you about something that happens when we fixate on a particular goal, right? When we actually say, I'm going to tackle this big obstacle that's been in my way for a long time. I'm going to, in this particular case, lose 35 pounds that I need to lose. By the way, this this former member, had tried keto, Atkins, South Beach, Whole30, macro counting, calorie counting, point counting, all these systems, and nothing had worked for her. But she came on board because she saw one of her family members that came on her program, did amazing, sustained the results. Till this day, 3 years in, that person is still at their weight goal. They feel great to have freedom around food. And so she saw that person and she said, I want to talk to this coach. She came on the program, crushed it, did amazing. But what happens is when you start actually tackling a goal, there's a part of your brain called the reticular activating system. The reticular activating system simply, it has a function in your brain that allows you to bring to the forefront those things that you're focusing on, right? Prior to you focusing on those particular things, you distort, you generalize, and you delete things. Let me explain. I want you to think of a time where you have fell in love with a particular car. Okay, let's call it a blue Volkswagen. You see the Volkswagen, blue Volkswagen, you say you want it, you go out into the world and you start seeing that Volkswagen everywhere you go. And we're so silly that the first thing we say is, God must want me to have this car. The universe must want me to have this car. Look, I'm seeing it everywhere. But really what's happening is your reticular activating system is now very, very attuned to that particular thing. So now you see it everywhere. So when we come on a nutrition program and you have a coach and you have a particular goal and you have a timeline and you're being kept hyper accountable, then you fixate on this particular thing. Now, if that is something that is hard for you, it's been hard in the past, it is connected to emotional anchors. And emotional anchors, anything that gets anchored into your nervous system when you are at a high or low emotion. A perfect example of this is you're driving your car, you look through your rear view mirror, and all of a sudden you see lights and you start to panic, right? You realize it's the cops, they're pulling you over. It's happened to you before. It's a scary moment that gets anchored into your system. Anytime you hear a siren, all of a sudden you are afraid. That's an emotional anchor. So when we talk about food, which is such a desirable thing for us humans, and such a natural impulse, and it's part of our livelihood, and we have learned to mitigate emotions, good or bad, through food, that creates emotional anchors. Why? Because anytime you feel friction, you feel tension, you feel adversity, you reach for food. And then what you signal your brain is that anytime that there's any kind of discomfort or friction in your life, that thing is going to comfort you. So you create an emotional anchor. It often starts when we're babies, right? We start crying, we're trying to figure out the world. Our parents give us a bottle and all of a sudden we stop crying. We continue to do that through our childhood, adolescence, adulthood, and it's no longer a bottle, but it's you running through the drive-through, grabbing the fast food, doing the thing that you shouldn't do, and you create emotional anchors like that, right? So your reticular activating system kind of zones into the thing that you are looking to do. And if you don't know how to deal with that toxicity, things can become really, really, really tricky. I always say inside of our programs that rules have never changed anyone. I want you to think about this, okay? When was the last time that you actually followed a set of rules that changed something for you? Maybe you followed the rules for a little while, but then you kind of fell off because once again, rules never change us. So when I say rules, let's talk about guidelines when it comes to nutrition, right? Let's talk about all the different guidelines that dieting have as part of the core of dieting, right? So counting macros, calories, points, those are all guidelines, aka rules. Those things have never changed anyone, because if those things had the true power to change people, then of course, everyone in America and the rest of the world would be super lean and healthy because most of us know what to do. Then the question is, why don't we do it? Well, we don't do it because we can follow rules for a little while, some of us at least, and we quickly fall off, right? And so following rules won't help us sustain results. Then the question is, man, JT, so then how do I lose the weight, keep it off, and make it something sustainable? I'm glad you asked. I'm going to give you 4 things here that I think are required in order for you to make a healthy lifestyle a sustainable lifestyle so that you're not yo-yo dieting, okay? So that you don't create distortions when you go on diets because you feel restricted and limited and you think that, that food is the enemy and you start to demonize food groups because that shouldn't happen, okay? Number 1, you must have the right kind of accountability. What do I mean by that? That accountability cannot come from your husband, spouse, friend, family member, or someone that you know. It has to be a third-party, unbiased accountability partner, specifically someone you pay. Why? Because when we pay attention. When we have someone that we're not too familiar with, there's sort of this distance and respect that allows that person to keep us accountable, and that works really, really well, aka a coach. This is why coaching works so incredibly well. We need someone to keep us hyper accountable. We need skin in the game. Ideally, we want to pay because when we pay attention. So we need the accountability, right? And we need to be able to be held accountable. And we need to be able to be held accountable for the things that we said we were going to do, aka be coachable, right? So your coach is going to tell you some things. If your coach is a good coach, he's going to push you outside of your comfort zone. We have to be comfortable with that, right? We have to submit to that coach's, guidelines. Otherwise, it just doesn't work, right? So we need to have the right kind of accountability. Number 2, when it comes to something so complex like food, we need a multidisciplinary approach to nutrition. What do I mean by that? The vast majority of you guys that have done some kind of nutrition plan, right? You have tackled it from a nutrition dynamics perspective. Eat this, don't eat that. And of course you're thinking, well, JT, what else am I going to do? I'm trying to lose weight. Yeah, you need the eat this, don't eat that. You need that kind of coaching, right? You need that kind of direction. But can I just say that in 2 decades of coaching people inside of the realm of fitness and nutrition, what I know to be true is that 80 to 90% of the battle is up here in our mind. So we need to understand what triggers us, what tempts us, how to deal with those temptations, how to actually overcome restaurants, weekends, holidays, people, places, things, all the things that come at us when we're trying to change our lifestyle. That's a big mindset component. It's not the rules. It's not the guidelines. Once again, if it were the guidelines, everyone in America and the rest of the world would be super lean. So we need a multidisciplinary approach that really treats the aspect of the cognitive functions of nutrition, how to deal with the triggers, the temptations. Maybe there's trauma in your life. There's counseling involved, coaching involved, 2 very different disciplines between coaching and counseling. Those 2 things are separate. Okay. But you need to bring those all in if you want to be successful in having a healthy lifestyle and then being able to sustain those results. So you need a multidisciplinary approach. Number 3, if your mindset doesn't change around food and movement, it's going to be impossible. Let me elaborate a little bit. So let's say, for example, you follow the rules, you're a good rule follower, you follow all the guidelines, you lose the weight, but you don't manage to really understand why you are actually doing what you're doing. You don't change the chip around food. You don't realize that this is not just about aesthetics or stepping on a scale, but that this has a bigger impact, not just over you, but those around you, right? That you have a legacy to leave behind for your kids or your friends. You want to be a light in the midst of darkness. You want to be an example. That's a strong intrinsic why that will keep you consistent. But if the mindset doesn't change, you follow all the rules, you'll lose the weight. But guess what? That weight will come back with a vengeance, because what we truly need is to change in our mind. We need to change our chip around food. We need to change the chip around movement. If exercise is uncomfortable, we don't like it. We don't like being sore, any of those particular things. And we just push back and push back and push back on it. Guess what? Your brain will eventually shut down to those things, and you will just absolutely hate the process, and you won't consistently do it. So when it comes to movement, when it comes to food, what we need to understand is, what is the intrinsic why? Why am I doing this? What is the bigger impact of what I'm doing here beyond the metric, beyond looking a certain way, beyond an aesthetic destination. And when you do that, then strikes a chord in you, and you're actually a different person. You start to make better, and your choices are now different because you're a different person. You have changed your mindset around food and movement. That needs to happen in order for things to be sustainable. Number 4, you must be ready to give up your toxicity for a better way. What do I mean by that? This particular person that came on board was a great rule follower. They just had a real challenge with food, and they didn't want to give up the comfort and the freedom of doing whatever, whenever, right? That is a toxic behavior. When we know that something is destructive, when we know that we want to achieve something, but we're not willing to grow, we're not willing to get outside of our comfort zone, we're not willing to change our mindset, or maybe we do it for a little while, but then we default back to the toxic behaviors. What we're saying is, I'm not willing to actually be uncomfortable. And one of the things that I know for sure, and that I've learned in 2 decades of coaching people, is that growth and comfort don't go together. You either choose one or you choose the other. And being able to sustain your weight, being able to have a healthy lifestyle around food requires that you get outside of your comfort zone, and that you actually start seeing this whole aspect of taming your hunger and activating your physiology as a growth mindset. Understanding that when you change one aspect of your life, it impacts other aspects of your life in a very positive way. And that, I don't know about you, but that's very exciting to me. There's nothing worse than being stagnant. But constant growth is motivating, it's inspiring, and it just doesn't inspire you, it inspires others around you. So if your life is about that, about you living a fulfilling, dynamic, inspiring life to yourself and to others, then this is a great path, and this is a very different way to see it. And if you actually see it from this perspective, then and only then, this whole idea of restricting yourself for a little bit, getting uncomfortable for a little bit, understanding that there is freedom on the other side, discipline brings freedom, then you won't see your nutrition plan as something restrictive that is supposed to bring distortions, and you won't battle with this as much. It's not easy, but inside of the Empty Your Bucket nutrition plan, we have made it as easy as it gets. If you have struggled with yo-yo dieting, if you are a binge eater, if you obsess about food, you think about food all the time, I want to submit to you that our 90-day transformation program has an amazing, amazing way to not only lose the weight, but keep it off once and for all, as long as you're willing to be coachable, you keep lines of communication open with your coach, and you're adhering to principles to the best of your ability. If those things are in place, if you want to have a growth mindset, my friend, I'll tell you that the Empty Your Bucket nutrition plan is an amazing resource, and it is an education that will last a lifetime. And the beauty of it, and the thing that we joke around all the time with our coaches, is if you come through our program in 90 days, you'll never need us again, meaning that we give you all the tools so that you can be successful for the rest of your life. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Why Diets Create Food Distortions and How to Avoid It. I'd love to hear your comments. If we're not family yet and you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do so. My name is JT Tapias with an idol called food. I'll talk to you guys soon. Ciao, ciao.